Ever since the emergence of the third wave, feminism has been viewed under a new lens. The method of dissection of feminist issues has altered, as intersectionality, or in other words, the understanding that various aspects of one's identity are inextricable, has led to the development of a new method of societal analysis. It is now understood that a woman's race, sexuality, and socioeconomic status are all intertwined with her female identity. Furthermore, her struggles with sexism differ vastly from the experiences of another woman whose identity combination does not match her own. However, while the concept of intersectionality is clear, one must also delve deeper into its implications. Beauty perceptions within all these different categories often differ as well. Grappling with these often contradictory beauty standards is difficult. For instance, while the Western middle-class beauty ideal dictates long straightened hair, pale skin, and thin complexion, traditional Southeast Asian beauty standards differed prior to Americanization. These different beauty standards become even more complicated as media makes them even more elusive by creating ideals that are not found in nature. This reality was presented in the Dove campaign. By photoshopping an already thin model to have her appear skinnier, making her cheekbones more pronounced, and airbrushing her blemishes, the beauty ideals become physically unattainable. This has a crippling effect on girls' self-esteem, creating skyrocketed spikes in eating disorders and plastic surgeries.
I feel like the Dove campaign had many problems with it already, just because the woman was supposed to symbolize like the epitome of beauty. She was supposed to be the zenith, and she's still very white, very thin, very blonde, and she has all of the Eurocentric features that modern media knows and loves to shove down the throats of a lot of people who identify as women, saying that this is what women should appeal or should be, even before editing, is still really problematic because it's not a fair representation of any woman.
Another problem is the westernization of beauty ideals globally. As Americanism spreads, women from all around the world are held to ideals that whitewash them, quite literally. With the creation of skin lightening creams, surgeries to emulate Western facial features, and hair products, such as keratin to straighten hair, women of all races are now expected to look white. This is further promoted through ads, as they always select ethnic people that have already succumbed to the Western ideals and have little traits of their own original ethnicities in them.
I think that like a combination of my upbringing and my Indian background, and then combined with the fact that I grew up in America, really contributed to my own perception of my beauty. I remember one day my mom came home and she handed me this packet of lotion called Fair and Lovely, which is a really relevant and a really like widespread beauty product in India, and it's essentially like even the name itself basically lends itself to being really discriminatory, because it's essentially saying that you can only be lovely if you're fair, if you're paler skinned.
In a similar vein, the lack of Indian or even ethnic women in Western media omits a vast portion of the US population, depriving them of any role models. Instead, these people are only exposed to white representation, as their aspirations and ideals westernize. Much like how the makeup created for white people washes out the faces of ethnic people, the lack of ethnic representation makes that segment of the population reach for a homogeneous yet narrow ideal that they cannot physically fit in without dispensing with parts of their identities.
Women internalize, women of color consistently are forced to buy products not made for them. I've bought so many nude lipsticks that openly wash me out, and I still wear them because I just don't find colors that match me sometimes. And it could be just a product of me internalizing like my Western tenets of beauty and wanting to be like beautiful white women, and so I buy the products that make them beautiful. I still really hate how wide my nose is, and I still really want a nose job, and I think that a lot of these beauty features that I love to look at and I love to observe and appreciate are really problematic because so many people, and including myself, have internalized that Western attributes are beautiful and inherently just exclude huge spectrums of other women who don't, who may not conform to these beauty standards and who just blatantly don't match these beauty standards. It's really difficult growing up being like of a deeper skin tone than the rest of your family because my skin is a little bit darker than the rest of my family's. At least my mother's and my little sisters. And I think it was a point of contention for my mom almost because she would buy me these things like Fair and Lovely and she would tell me to avoid drinking coffee because apparently that makes your skin darker. And so there were just all of these things that my mother like compelled me to do because she didn't perceive my skin to be as beautiful as my lighter counterparts. I remember doing cheekbone exercises in the mirror, which were so painful, but I wanted high cheekbones so badly, and so I'd force myself to stand in the mirror for like 5 minutes a day and just do these really awful cheekbone exercises that I don't think were really effective at all. But it was because I internalized this concept that Western conventional standards of beauty are the only things that can be considered beautiful. I don't think that in the modern media there's many Indian role models for me. I feel like Mindy Kaling is probably the only one that I can come up with just like that, and Priyanka Chopra. And Mindy Kaling is still really problematic because in her show she exclusively dates white men. She's really self-hating. She makes fun of her own culture profusely, and Priyanka Chopra is great, and I think she's incredible, and every woman should look up to her. But there's really just a huge dearth of any Indian woman or any Indian female that's in Hollywood and doesn't conform to mainstream Hollywood standards. I remember being absolutely obsessed with so many white women growing up. I used to watch the Princess Diaries almost every day. I loved Anne Hathaway and I thought she was the epitome of beauty. She was slender, her nose was so straight, her hair was so thin and straight and long. And she just was the goal that I set myself up to be, and I understand looking back that I could never be her.
It is interesting to see how Indians have internalized these Western standards. Much like US depicted villains in old cartoons as black, Bollywood antagonists are significantly darker than the protagonists. However, this extends beyond shadeism, as the darker-skinned people also have prominent Southeast Asian features such as shallow cheekbones and wide noses. This has harmful effects on society as a whole segment of the population feels ashamed of its physical features merely due to poor media representation.
I think that a lot of the beauty standards of India and America are pretty parallel just because they both have really ingrained Eurocentric systems in it. I think that on a whole in Western society, people with darker skin are oftentimes demonized. Like, for instance, in my case, in Bollywood and the Indian society as a whole, I think that a lot of people with darker skin tone are dehumanized and they're definitely antagonized. I think that a lot of the antagonists in Bollywood feature films have very distinct South Asian features. They have wide noses, shallow cheekbones, and obviously dark skin, and the darker the skin, the worse I feel like their character is portrayed as. It's portrayed as evil almost, and I think that many of the protagonists have these very distinctly Aryan features that are very evident in every single Bollywood movie.
What is important to note is a double standard ingrained in our society. Men have not been scrutinized under such a harsh limelight as women with unrealistic ideals. Instead, fads have emerged, praising their pudginess under the guise of the dad bod ideal. Furthermore, while women have had their hair held up in a bun for centuries, when a man started doing so, the term man bun had to be coined. These double standards embedded in our society make it difficult for women to feel content with their bodies. These double standards, however, also seep through sartorial choices. While women are expected to devote hours into thinking up their outfit, only to get judged harshly after, a man is lauded for putting minimal effort. This has been evidenced in the coverage of Melania Trump and Bill Clinton during the last presidential race.
Society has an interesting way of twisting beauty standards for men and women. For instance, the dad bod and the man bun was a huge craze last year, and they basically glorified men for not being physically fit or conventionally physically fit. Whereas women have been fat shamed and fat phobic and have been really marginalized in the beauty industry as a whole, like fat women, because they are larger and because they have fat. But when a man decides to have like a normative, like regular size 8 body, he's glorified and he's sexualized, which is so interesting to me. And even the man bun, like why couldn't you just call it a regular bun? Women have been donning buns for centuries. But to gender it just because now men are adopting it and to make it more masculine because there's something inherently shameful about wearing something that's feminine is a problem in and of itself. This double standard is so emphasized in society and it's palpable at this point.
As we come to understand intersectionality, we start fathoming that identities ought not to be broken down into different reductive categories. The various facets of one's identity comprise a gleaming tapestry that makes one's individual experiences different from another person's, regardless of whether they share a common identity or not.
I think that if I had to rank like my identities, at first I think that my identity is mostly like more of a mosaic instead of like a really stratified system, just because I think intersectionality really has played a large role in how I perceive myself.
This, however, extends beyond mere intersectionality, as clashing beauty standards stemming from one's multiple identities becomes a prevalent issue. In order to avoid whitewashing of other aspects of one's personality in order to merely fit into the social group for one of their identities, we ought to learn to embrace the diverse mixes. This ideal can only be actualized once we start appreciating and representing in the media people who have multiple different identities they identify with, such as Indian American actresses. This is the only way people with these intricate identity mosaics, like Rohini, can grow to feel comfortable with their different identities, hold themselves to realistic standards, and be happy with their variety of identities.
We need more people that look like me, and that look like women of color, and that are women of color in the modeling agencies and in the modeling world, because representation is so important. It's pivotal for young girls to see that there's women who are symbols of beauty who look just like them and who have the same upbringing and value system as they do. And we need intersectionality in the media because of this reason.